Hi, this is Tim Curtis, Town Manager, Town of Madison, and it's that time of year again, time for our annual town meeting, coming up on Monday night, June 11th at 7 p.m., and we'll be meeting at the Madison Junior High School auditorium, and I hope to see many of you there. We've got quite a bit to discuss this year at town meeting. That's why I wanted to try to get this information out to you ahead of time. First and foremost is the local economy, which is based up on the budgets and the property tax rate that is important to all of us. This year we're anticipating a fairly stable budget and tax rate, primarily because the budgets that came in that make up your property taxes, the school, the county, and the municipal budget, are all relatively flat this year, not a drastic change to the taxpayer. The other part of your tax bill is focused on the valuation of the town, and that's the area that we've struggled with over the last couple of years with the closing and sale of Madison Paper Industries. That valuation has dropped from $500 million down close to $350 million. We're hopeful now that that has stabilized and there won't be a drastic change in valuation, which should keep our tax rate stable. The information for town meeting can be found in the town report, which is available at the town office. In the back pages of the town report is the town meeting warrant with all of the articles, and the first 14 articles have to do with the municipal budget coming up this year. I wanted to point out a couple other articles in the town meeting warrant that are a little bit different because we don't normally deal with topics like this, but one of them is article number 15, and that has to do with Madison Electric Works. What that article is asking is if the voters of Madison would authorize the board of directors for Madison Electric Works to change their charter, which will allow them to borrow through the issuing of revenue bonds. Since the 1970s, Madison Electric has had a charter that has restricted their ability to borrow to a town meeting vote and what's called a general obligation bond. So this is allowing them to change their charter. They have to go to the state legislature to do that, but they need the permission of Madison voters to start this process. So that'll be a yes or no vote on article number 15. Another article that's unique this year is article number 19, which is to authorize the town to convey land over in East Madison, known as Jacobs Pines, to a group called Somerset Woods Trustees. As some of you may be aware, George Jacobs willed that land to the town back in the 1980s, and his will authorized the Library Board of Trustees to be the overseers of that land. Well, the Library Board of Trustees has not been able to essentially develop the land as George Jacobs' will wanted it developed, to be used for recreation and trails and so forth. So the library trustees have voted and the Board of Selectmen have voted to bring this issue to the town to see if the town will authorize this land to be conveyed to the Somerset Woods trustees, and they will be able to develop this land for the recreational purposes that George Jacob intended so many years ago. So those are two of the kind of unique articles that will be coming your way at town meeting on Monday night, June 11th. There are also 10 articles that have to do with some changes to town ordinances. The Board of Selectmen has worked very thoroughly over the last 6 to 8 months, holding public hearings at some of their meetings to hash out and discuss some of these changes to ordinances. Some are minor changes, just replacing mistakenly written sentences and kind of updating the language so it makes more sense. Some are the ordinances that have to do with the planning board, such as the subdivision and site review ordinance. Both of those ordinances have been completely reworked in the last couple of years to bring them up to speed and put them in line with state laws and state statutes as well. Some of the biggest ordinance changes we're talking about come down to three categories: cemeteries, animals, and of course an ordinance to prohibit retail recreational marijuana sales in Madison. So I'll try to touch on each one of those. And I'll also point out to you that because there are so many ordinance changes, we've developed a packet, and this is available at the town office. It'll also be available at town meeting on June 11th. And this packet kind of gives you a summary page summarizing each of the ordinance changes, and it also gives you more detail if you want to know some of the specifics. In regards to cemeteries, the town has had for several years 2 ordinances that tend to overlap, Chapter 26 and Chapter 553. So what the selectmen have done is they have merged the information into one, so they'll be asking you to change some information and update Chapter 26 on cemeteries and then eliminate Chapter 553 because of the duplication there. Some of the changes have to do with setting up particular places in Forest Hills for a cremation section, and certain articles such as benches and larger items that tend to be difficult to mow around. There's going to be specific rules regarding those types of items at the Forest Hill Cemetery as well. So that's essentially the summary of the cemetery changes. Under the animals ordinance, currently the only information that we have in our animals ordinance has to do with dogs. And we wanted to add some language that would change a little bit of the parameters of what constitutes a violation of a barking dog. So that's been added. And then a whole another section has been added to the animal ordinance that has to do with the location of what we would consider farm animals, such as cows and pigs. And the change is going to be primarily to restrict those types of farm animals to property that's larger than 1.5 acres. So more than 1.5 acres of land will be required to allow for that type of farm animal on that property. So those are some of the animal ordinance changes. And then of course we've had this long 2-year discussion over retail or recreational marijuana. The reason that there's going to be an ordinance at town meeting on prohibiting recreational marijuana in Madison is because at the voting booth last November, a majority of the voters directed the selectmen to bring this ordinance forward. Now there have been some changes at the state level, but what this ordinance does at a local level is it would prohibit establishing large-scale growing, establishing retail shops, and what was referred to as social clubs. So it does not affect businesses that are currently existing in Madison that may sell either medical marijuana or retail marijuana products. So those businesses would see no change. The law wouldn't change as in regards to personal use. The state law still is in place for the personal use of marijuana. So this is really just prohibiting a large business to come in and do something that perhaps the voters of Madison wouldn't be in agreement with. That being said, if a large-scale business for marijuana testing or growing or retail wanted to do business in Madison, they could apply, but the final say would have to go back to the voters at a future town meeting. So that summarizes some of the ordinances that we're looking at. And again, I encourage you, if you'd like more details, to take a look at this packet that's being prepared for town meeting. It's available right now at the town office. While I've got you here, the last thing I want to touch on is when you go to the polls to actually vote on the following day, Tuesday, June 12th. Polls will be open at the town office from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And this is where we normally vote for local officials such as select board members, school board members, water district, sanitary district, and so forth. But you may be aware that this will also be the first time that many of our voters will be experiencing what's called ranked choice voting. And that's only going to be on the Republican and Democrat primary ballots. So there will be opportunities for you to exercise this new right of ranked choice voting. If you have questions about that, I encourage you to contact the town office and talk to the town clerk about that, because there are resources available to help you get a better understanding of what you're doing. Because once you have that ballot in your hand and you're in the ballot box, the time for asking questions is over, and the staff at the town office is not able to help you at that time. So I encourage you, if you would like information, to try to get that information ahead of time. There's also going to be a state referendum question called Question 1, and this also has to do with ranked choice voting. Whether or not you want ranked choice voting to continue as it is or to change, And this also can be confusing if you're looking at it for the first time. So I encourage you, again, contact the town office, talk to the town clerk. She can give you some resources in regards to this question. One, I also encourage you to look at it online so you'll be prepared as you head to the voting booth. And finally, there's going to be 2 questions that the Madison selectmen have put on the ballot this year, asking the voters of Madison if they would like to change the process by which we hire, if you will, a road commissioner and a town treasurer clerk. Traditionally, those have been elected positions in Madison. We're asking the voters if they want those positions to continue to be elected by the majority of the voters, or if they want those positions to be appointed by the town manager with the approval of the select board. So that's a change that some communities have made across the state, and the select board thought it was prudent to bring it to the town voters this election day. So those are some of the things that will be going on at the polls on June 12th. But I wanted to also just remind you, town meeting Monday night, June 11th at 7 o'clock at the Madison Junior High, and I hope to see you there. I'm Tim Curtis saying thanks for listening.